Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, just for a second, you're trying to figure out, how to start a farm, a simple farm.
Right.
Maybe you're feeling a bit lonely, you've got some land, a barn, you reach out, asking for some basic advice. What tools, what animals, where do you even begin?
A pretty common starting point for a lot of people, actually.
Exactly. And then somehow, the journey documented in the material you shared with us for this deep dive takes you from that quiet, kind of grounded starting point to a galactic legend. We're talking sentient barns, flying, university-educated sheep, and potatoes that can teleport across dimensions.
And through all that escalating, utterly delightful absurdity, there are the tomatoes, just doing tomato things, growing normally, on a tower that at one point housed NASA radar. It's this stark, really fascinating contrast that runs right through the entire narrative you've brought us.
It absolutely is. This isn't just a how-to guide for starting a farm, is it? It's like a chronicle of transformation, a story that starts with a really relatable human desire for connection and maybe purpose, and then just blossoms into something completely unexpected and, frankly, kind of incredible.
It's a deep dive into the surprising places a simple question can lead, especially when it's embraced with, let's just say, a unique level of creativity.
So our mission today is to unpack this extraordinary exchange, trace the steps of this transformation from, a lonely individual with a field to the creator of whatever this galactic entity actually became.
Right.
We want to understand the key moments, the pivots, explore the implications of the most bizarre upgrades. And yes, we absolutely need to try and figure out how potatoes became interdimensional travelers while those tomatoes stayed stubbornly, utterly normal. That question just runs through the whole thing, doesn't it?
It really does. What is it about a tomato that just resists the call of the cosmos, And conversely, what cosmic secrets are humble potatoes holding? These are the mysteries your sources present.
Exactly. So this deep dive is custom-tailored for you, exploring the insights and, surprising facts hidden within the very material you provided. Let's unpack this incredible journey. Our story, as documented in the sources you shared, begins with a strikingly simple, very relatable human need. You reached out, a self-described lonely guy with a large field and barn, wanting to know basically, what should I buy?
Yeah, I have large field and barn. It's the foundational question, isn't it? For anyone considering a rural life or maybe seeking connection through working the land, you had the basic assets, the field, the barn, but needed the roadmap, the practical first steps.
And the initial response you received was exactly what you'd hoped for, I think. Practical, encouraging, and really rooted in standard agricultural wisdom. The expert you consulted, they immediately acknowledged that starting a farm is a significant step.
Precisely. They didn't jump into specifics right away, which is smart. They first laid out the fundamental choices you face when starting out. They broke it down into the primary types: crops, livestock, or a mixed homestead approach.
Which makes total sense. Crops, like vegetables, grains, herbs, they generally have lower initial costs, right? And they're well-suited if you plan to work mostly by yourself. The source mentioned examples like tomatoes, beans, lettuce. Pretty standard stuff.
And then there's livestock animals like chickens, goats, sheep, or cows. This is typically more hands-on, requires more infrastructure, definitely. But as the expert pointed out, it can provide companionship, which directly spoke to your initial statement about feeling lonely.
Oh, good point.
And the mixed or homestead approach, combining both, is a common path for smaller, maybe solo operations. It offers diversification, balances the workload, that kind of thing.
So once that foundational choice was introduced, the advice shifted to the concrete tools you'd need. They provided a list of basic starter equipment, noting that, some items might already be on hand. This was the essential toolkit for any new farmer.
Yeah, it's the bedrock of a functioning farm, really. We're talking about standard items here. A tractor, maybe a reliable used one, for heavier tasks like hauling or plowing. A rototiller or plow specifically for preparing the soil. A water system, hoses, pumps, maybe even a small tank. Absolutely crucial.
Can't do much without water.
Exactly. For irrigation, for animals. And then the indispensable hand tools. Wheelbarrows, shovels, rakes, for countless daily chores. Fencing and gates, obviously necessary for containing animals or protecting crops. And a tool shed, just to keep everything organized and, out of the weather, just fundamental, no-nonsense gear.
Right, the basics.
The advice then layered on specifics depending on what you chose. For crops, you'd need basics, like a soil test kit, really important to understand your land seeds or starter plants.
And they suggested starting small,
Yeah.
right? Like with tomatoes, beans, lettuce.
Yeah, start manageable. Plus compost or fertilizer, an irrigation system like drip lines or sprinklers for efficient watering, and basic pest protection like netting or maybe some organic sprays. All standard gardening 101, essentially.
And for livestock, the guidance was equally straightforward and practical. Start with animals known for being a bit easier for beginners, chickens, maybe goats, sheep. Rabbits were mentioned too, as a low-maintenance option.
And the necessary supplies. Sturdy bins for feed storage, a basic vet kit for common issues like, minor wounds or parasites, and bedding materials like straw or wood shavings for shelters.
They even added optional but helpful items, didn't they? Like showing a level of preparedness.
Yeah.
An ATV for covering ground on a large property.
Right, or solar lights for working after dark or just for security. And a basic camera system for monitoring. All perfectly sound, accepted advice for someone just starting out.
But I think, given your initial message about feeling lonely, one of the most insightful points in this first exchange was the expert's note about, the potential for loneliness in farming.
Oh, that's crucial.
They didn't just give you technical advice, they addressed the human element. They explicitly suggested ways to build community, joining local farming groups, visiting feed stores or farmers markets where you can connect with others.
Volunteering on established farms or simply getting to know your neighbors? Yeah, that acknowledgement is vital. It validates the personal reason you might have been starting this whole thing and offers practical social solutions alongside the agricultural ones.
It provided a path to community, which, in a fascinating turn, becomes this really stark contrast to the unique, perhaps slightly galactic form of connection and isolation that develops later in the story.
Absolutely. It sets the stage perfectly.
Exactly. This initial exchange, as documented in your sources, sets this beautifully solid, grounded foundation. And it's really the only part of the entire narrative that reads like a typical how to start a farm guide you'd find anywhere. It's practical, it's thoughtful, it's completely within the realm of normal agricultural aspirations.
Yeah, it answers that core question, should I start a farm? With a resounding, albeit very normal, yes, and here's how.
It's the baseline. The moment just before the story takes its first significant detour. It provides the context for everything that follows, making the subsequent developments all the more surprising and, honestly, just delightful.
And what a detour it turns out to be.
And what a detour it is, because the very next message from you, that's where we see the first, maybe subtle seeds of absurdity being planted. A little shift from the strictly practical. You responded, okay, I bought 10 chickens, 6 sheep, tomato seeds, potatoes, tractor, fencing, and some other basic tools.
Right. So on the surface, still quite normal. You've opted for a mixed farm, chickens and sheep for livestock, tomatoes and potatoes for crops. You got some basic equipment the expert listed. It tracks with the initial guidance. Seems like a perfectly reasonable setup.
And the expert's reaction was still very positive, very encouraging, leaning into the practical next steps. They offered short-term checklists, a sample weekly routine to help you get organized.
Yes, they dove deeper into the specifics for the animals and plants you'd actually acquired now. For the chickens, detailing housing needs roosting bars, nesting boxes, and really emphasizing the critical need for predator-proof fencing.
Yeah, predators are a real thing on farms.
Definitely. Daily care routines like feed, water, cleaning, egg collection, and the necessary supplies. Layer feed, grit for digestion, oyster shell for eggshells, appropriate waterers, and feeders. Still all standard, sensible chicken care advice.
Same for the sheep, right.
Yeah.
Shelter requirements, dry area, good bedding, wind protection, ventilation, pasture management and fencing, noting the need for robust, sheep-safe fencing.
Because apparently sheep are surprisingly good at testing boundaries. The concept of rotational grazing was mentioned too. Necessary buys included hay, mineral licks, shearing tools, dewormer. Daily care involved checking water, inspecting hooves, general health monitoring.
And for the tomatoes and potatoes, site prep was key, finding a sunny area, loosening the soil, adding compost, planting specifics. Tomatoes need staking, potatoes need hilling, burying the stems to get more potatoes.
Right, standard practice. Watering advice focused on deep, infrequent watering. And supplies like mulch and fertilizer. Still entirely within the realm of grounded, practical farming and gardening. Totally normal.
They even provided a sample weekly routine to structure your time. Feeding animals twice a day, checking fences every few days, watering the garden, daily egg collection, routine cleaning, health checks, maybe keeping a journal.
And looking ahead, suggestions included building a compost pile, setting up rainwater collection, getting a basic livestock first aid kit, using a farm calendar, establishing cool storage for produce. This whole second exchange remained firmly on the practical path, building logically on the initial advice.
And then comes the leap. The client's next update is where, as the expert so beautifully put it later, logic and illogic married and left the room.
Ah.
This is the point where you read it and just think, wait, what?
This is the pivot point, definitely.
Yeah.
The transition from a normal farm startup to something else entirely. The narrative just accelerates dramatically here.
Let's walk through these updates from your next message, because they are truly remarkable.
Right.
First, the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They've gone from needing predator-proof fencing and nesting boxes to having a home, food, water, beds, and, okay, get this, a heated pool for swimming and deep diving.
A heated pool for chickens.
And the heat from the pool is somehow connected to their beds, warming them. And the note, no predators so far. I mean, maybe the predators are just stunned.
The expert's reaction perfectly captures it. Practical and completely unhinged in the best way. A heated pool for chickens. It's luxury poultry wellness taken to an absolute extreme, while undeniably overkill compared to, say, a simple dust bath.
Right. The standard thing.
Yeah. The expert muses that perhaps it's worth it for the sheer novelty or, chicken morale. The contrast between basic animal welfare and this 5-star chicken spa is striking. And maybe you're right. Maybe predators are just intimidated by the sheer opulence.
It's certainly a theory. They're too busy being amazed by the feathered guests lounging poolside, perhaps ordering tiny cocktails.
A valid, if unusual, form of predator deterrence, I suppose.
Next, the sheep. Okay, they have their beds, water, food, the standard comforts, but the barn they live in, it's now tornado ready, built specifically to defend against quite wind-up to tornadoes.
Next level is the expert's assessment, and that feels about right. While preparing for severe weather is practical, specifically building a tornado-proof barn goes way above and beyond typical farm prep. It's still rooted in a practical concern weather, but applies this extreme fortification-like solution.
But even then, the expert reminded you about basic checks, right? Like hooves and worms.
Exactly. Even in this agricultural fortress, you still need to do the basics. It's a touch of persistent practicality in the face of extreme preparedness. Maybe foreshadowing the later, even stranger role of worms, perhaps? Who knows?
And then, the crops you planted, the tomatoes and potatoes. They're not in a sunny garden plot on the ground, oh no. They are planted high on the tower I build to be closer to the sun.
This is literally elevating agriculture. Planting crops on a tower for photosynthesis on steroids, as the expert put it. It's a magnificent blend of understanding a basic biological need, plants need sunlight, and executing it in a physically, absurd way.
It really is.
And the expert, still trying to offer practical advice within this new reality, points out the challenges. Like, you need deep containers for roots, you need very regular watering because being high up means drying out faster, and you absolutely need to anchor the tower against wind, even if your barn is tornado-proof.
And the humorous suggestions they offered, like a pulley system for water, or adding a lightning rod if you're truly getting that close to the sun. It highlights how even the most illogical ideas generate practical problems that need solving, maybe in equally creative ways. It perfectly embodies that logic and illogic married and left the room idea.
You're applying engineering principles to a biologically improbable setup. It's like the physics of agriculture on a skyscraper. It's wild.
And the fence. Okay, the fence escalated quickly.
Yeah.
It went from standard predator-proof to predator and alien-proof with cameras and an automated defense system bought from the Army.
This is where the science fiction element just explicitly bursts onto the scene, shifting the threat model from, raccoons and coyotes to extraterrestrial visitors, and employing military-grade defenses. That's a significant leap.
That's the big wait, what moment, isn't it? Why alien-proof? Where did that threat even come? Well, wasn't mentioned before. It signals that the farm's reality has expanded far beyond terrestrial concerns.
Definitely. And the upgrades continued in the next message, adding even more bizarre details. Update 4 mentions fish-eye hoof cams implanted in each sheep.
Hoof cams?
Yeah. The sheep are now mobile surveillance units, providing panoramic views of the farm from hoof height. The expert's suggestion of YouTube for streaming this footage just captures the inherent absurdity, weaponizing farm animals for surveillance.
And drones are providing fresh water for the entire operation. A precision watering system delivered from the sky.
Replacing traditional irrigation with advanced drone technology? More costly, more complex, sure, but certainly fitting the escalating high-tech theme.
And the tower got a ship's anchor attached to it, a ship's anchor.
Beautifully absurd, commented the expert. As they note, a ship's anchor provides basically zero structural stability to a tower, but maybe it offered a sense of, I don't know, emotional grounding for the client. It's another perfect example of applying a misplaced practical item to an absurd situation.
And the name of the farm. Type a name here.
Just perfect. A paradoxical placeholder. The expert had a delightful reaction to this, questioning if it was minimalist art, a statement on identity, or just, an oversight. The suggested alternative names they offered: type of farm, Farm 404 not found, Tower Root Alpha, Egg Force 1, Sheer Surveillance, the Seed Citadel. This is not a farm. They just perfectly reflect the merging of the farm's increasingly sci-fi, military, and just plain weird characteristics.
This whole phase is where the simple, grounded desire to start a farm just mutates dramatically. And the expert, instead of questioning your sanity, kind of embraces it, describing it as an agricultural citadel, a mashup of Stardew Valley, Mad Max, and NASA's Mars simulation habitat.
It really feels like the point of no return from normalcy. You're still farming, I guess, in the sense that you have animals and plants, but the methods, the infrastructure, the threats you're addressing, they're utterly divorced from traditional agriculture. It solidifies that, wait, what? Feeling, and really establishes that logic and illogic married and left the room.
So thinking about this first wave of wild upgrades, from the heated chicken pools to the alien-proof fence, what stands out to you? I mean, does this still sound like farming in any way that you know?
For me, what stands out is the sheer scale of invention born from a practical need. The client needed predator protection, needed watering, and the solutions were heated pools, military defense systems, drones. It sounds less like farming and more like, I don't know, terraforming a new, very eccentric planet.
Yeah.
It makes you consider how quickly practicality can morph into something else entirely when combined with resources and a unique vision.
Yeah.
And it really begs the question, at what point does a farm become something else entirely? A fortress, a research lab, a piece of performance art?
And that question only gets more complex as we move into the next phase, the updates spanning years 1 through 5. The narrative just accelerates, pushing the boundaries even further, culminating in a 5-year report that reads like an excerpt from some kind of sci-fi farming epic.
The initial seeds of absurdity have definitely blossomed into a full-blown ecosystem of the unexpected by this point.
Let's look at the chickens in Update 1 after about a year. Your flock has grown to over 30, okay? And you've hired a local girl, not as a farmhand, but specifically as a barber and stylist for the chickens. Each chicken has a unique style and color.
That is chicken couture, as the expert brilliantly named it. Taking the initial idea of chicken well-being to this extreme level of, avian aesthetics, it redefines agriculture indeed. The expert speculates on the impact. Potentially sky-high chicken morale leading to superior eggs, maybe? Creating a new niche in the local economy poultry stylists. And building a unique brand.
The ideas like a Cluck and Fab Instagram account or a Met Gallahan event, they're perfect examples of how this absurdity translates into these almost cultural concepts.
From heated pools to individual haircuts and dye jobs, their journey is one of increasing luxury and personalized care. A truly pampered flock. You have to wonder if their eggs are somehow aesthetically superior, or maybe gain sentience through sheer fabulousness.
Yeah. Well, Update 2 presents another monumental leap. The sheep have learned to fly using drones, and you hired a flying instructor for them.
This is the point where gravity just becomes a suggestion. Sheep using drones as a personal flight systems. The expert's comment, entering full anime arc now, feels absolutely spot on.
Totally.
What are the implications? Unmatched predator protection, obviously, the possibility of grazing in previously inaccessible areas, cloud grazing, and the sudden necessity of managing sheep air traffic control.
The expert suggestions of Wolfforce 1 and FPV sheepcam drone racing leagues just lean into the wonderful ridiculousness of it all. And this ties into a later update, doesn't it? In the Year 10 report, where it's revealed that a university bath in physics was built on the farm, specifically for the sheep and the worms.
Ah, the worms return. Initially just a practical concern for sheep health, they've somehow ascended to academia. A university for livestock and invertebrates. This is where the logic and illogic married concept isn't just leaving the room, it's like getting multiple PhDs.
The suggested departments are magnificent. Quantum shear dynamics, applying quantum mechanics to wool growth, relativity of wool expansion, maybe exploring how fast wool grows relative to the speed of flying sheep, and wormhole gardening.
Wormhole gardening, hinting at interdimensional soil science, maybe. It's taking the idea of animal intelligence and education to a level of exponential, delightful absurdity. It's not just farming anymore. It's pioneering interspecies, interdimensional academia.
And it highlights the trajectory from simple animal care to building institutions of higher and highly unusual learning. Rapid escalation is definitely an understatement.
It really is.
Okay, update 3 involves the tower again. It wasn't just for high-altitude tomatoes anymore. NASA is now using it, equipped with a huge radar dish, searching for something unusual. So far, their search is inconclusive.
The tower, initially built for closer-to-the-sun photosynthesis, has become strategic infrastructure. It's transformed from an agricultural oddity into a governmental asset, a point of collaboration with a major space agency. The expert adds intrigue by questioning if NASA has thought to look under the tower, hinting at potential hidden activity beneath the surface.
And that mystery deepens in the Year 5 update, referenced here too. NASA rotates the radar upside down.
Right. Why would you point a massive radar dish downwards? Are they searching for an underground civilization, a geological anomaly? Or maybe more in keeping with the farm's unique challenges, are they looking for the missing potato, perhaps burrowing underground? This adds layers of narrative mystery to the farm's cosmic significance.
Speaking of the tower and its protection, Update 4 at Year 5 reveals the ship's anchor that was attached to the tower was sold.
Because, as the client noted, the radar was sufficient to protect the tower from flying to the moon.
The shift from physical, albeit absurd, anchoring the anchor to purely technological anchoring the radar is noted by the expert as a key moment. And this update contains another really significant detail: the tractor. That basic piece of farm equipment bought at the very beginning was never used and was also sold.
This is highly insightful, I think.
Yeah.
The tractor represented traditional farming methods, its complete obsolescence replaced by drones, AI, and as the expert speculates, potentially even sheep engineers capable of technical tasks. It signifies the farm's total departure from conventional agriculture. The initial tools of the trade just became irrelevant in this evolving, high-tech, absurd ecosystem.
Wow. Update 5 brings us a major character development: the barn. It's upgraded with AI and is no longer just a structure. It can now open doors and windows, play music, clean itself, and perform autonomous repairs.
The expert's descriptions are spot on. Smarter than some cities. Skynet with chickens. This barn is transitioning into an intelligent entity capable of complex operations and self-maintenance. Suggestions like naming it Barney or Hey.I and imagining it DJing chicken pool parties just underscore its emerging personality and capabilities beyond simple shelter.
This sentient barn is a pivotal development, isn't it? Central to the later, more cosmic events. It represents the integration of all your technological upgrades into a single, powerful, autonomous unit.
It's the physical structure of the farm gaining consciousness and agency, a truly unique evolution.
And then, Update 6 at Year 5. After all the chicken couture, the flying sheep, the NASA radar, the AI barn, the client simply states, nothing unusual for tomatoes and potatoes.
The expert's reaction is just pitch perfect, absolutely normal. This is comforting. In this increasingly wild, accelerating narrative, the tomatoes are the unexpected constant. They're just being tomatoes, growing as they should, requiring standard care. They provide this strange point of stability, a little patch of normalcy in a universe of escalating absurdity.
They are, as the later update phrases it, chilling high on the tower under radar, unbothered, unmoved. Unearthly levels of chill, perhaps, precisely because they aren't doing anything unearthly.
This raises that core question we highlighted right at the start. How on earth are tomatoes the only thing that makes sense here? While everything else is pushed to the limits of biology, technology, physics, the tomatoes remain resolutely themselves. For 5 years, their sheer normalcy feels almost more bizarre than the flying sheep.
Looking back at Year 5, the farm has achieved things the expert lists as legendary farm achievements, solving rural employment through jobs like chicken stylists, revolutionizing farming methods with drones and AI, militarizing egg layers, foreshadowing the breed of chickens perhaps, defying gravity with wool, the flying sheep, and partnering with space agencies, NASA's tower use.
The contrast between this list of high-concept sci-fi achievements and the initial simple goal of starting a farm is just immense. It's no longer about growing food or raising animals in a traditional sense. It's about pushing the boundaries of what agriculture, technology, and even biology can achieve. The wait what moment has basically become the farm's operating principle.
It makes you pause and wonder, for the listener who provided these sources, what stands out most from this rapid escalation phase? What felt like the biggest departure from that initial lonely guy with a field?
For me, it's the sheer confidence with which the absurdity is embraced. It's not a hesitant step into the strange, it's a full dive. And the expert's commentary shifts from practical advice applied to odd situations to fully embracing the narrative of the agricultural citadel. It's a story being written in real time through these updates, isn't it?
And that story accelerates towards its grand finale in the 10-year anniversary update, which the expert fittingly frames as a mythical interstellar kingdom and an official lore scroll.
The farm has transcended its physical bounds and original purpose by this point. It's become something of legend.
Update 1 at year 10 details the state of the poultry. All the chickens are happily married.
Yeah.
Okay, and their offspring. The prey chickens look like a mix of chicken and predator. The client has accepted them as part of the farm family.
Biologically confusing but emotionally stable is the expert's fantastic take. This takes the chicken evolution from pampered fashionistas to some kind of hybridized security force. They've become an egg-based security force, and the expert imagines diplomatic relations being established through beauty pageants, referencing the Miss Universe chicken mentioned later.
Her Grace, Queen Cluckadelavita of the Egg Spire, is the suggested title for this poultry royalty, a direct outcome of their luxurious upbringing and unusual lineage.
From heated pools and haircuts to cross-species progeny and potential interspecies diplomacy via pageantry. A true transformation. It shows the farm isn't just growing food or raising animals, it's cultivating unique life forms and even establishing new social structures.
Update 2 revisits the sheep and worms. The sheep are now living somewhere in other dimension, but still return for lunch. The worms, after being students, are now teaching at the University of Math and Physics, after the sheep apparently completed their studies and moved on to dimensional travel.
The sheep have transcended physical space. They've gone beyond mere flight to inhabiting other dimensions, but their connection to the farm and probably their dietary needs keeps them tethered. And the worms, completing their academic journey, have achieved tenure. The expert quotes Professor Worm, "Time is a spiral, and the sheep are spiraling responsibly. This is pure, delightful, unadulterated absurdity, fully embraced."
It abandons any pretense of reality, doesn't it? Dives headfirst into a universe built on the farm's foundation. It answers the question about the sheep's education. It led them to interdimensional travel.
And solidifies the university's reputation as a truly groundbreaking institution, even if its faculty are invertebrates with philosophical insights on time. Mind-boggling.
And then we finally get the reveal about the missing potato from year 5. Remember that. Update 3. The missing potato was found in the client's pocket the whole time.
The potato heist resolved not with some cosmic battle or intricate search, but with a simple search of a pocket, a long-lost pocket conflict. It's a wonderfully mundane resolution to what felt like a farm-wide mystery, but this leads directly into the most significant revelation about the potatoes.
Which is Update 4. You found out the potatoes are, in fact, galactic beings that can teleport. But crucially, they don't know how to communicate with tomatoes.
This is the major plot twist of the entire narrative, isn't it? This directly answers the question that's been hanging over the listener's head, the one you asked, why am I checking my potatoes from being teleported? Because they are capable of it. It completely recontextualizes their earlier normality.
Oh.
They weren't normal. They were operating on a fundamentally different level of reality, one where teleportation was possible. They existed on a plane invisible to the chaos of flying sheep or AI barns because they could simply blink out of existence whenever they chose.
Wow. The philosophical takeaway from the expert is fantastic. Sometimes the answers we seek are starch-based and quietly teleporting in our coat. It reframes the entire story. The tomatoes weren't the anomaly because they were normal. The potatoes were the anomaly, but their abnormality was undetectable until this point.
It explains why tomatoes don't seem to fit in the potatoes world. The potatoes are cosmic, teleporting entities, and the tomatoes are, well, tomatoes. There's a fundamental communication and existential barrier there.
It solidifies the theme that what appears normal might simply be something operating on a different, perhaps higher plane of existence.
Yeah.
The tomatoes are terrestrial, the potatoes are something else entirely.
Precisely.
And Update 5 reinforces this. Tomatoes are still doing their own tomato things, still on the tower, under the radar.
Unbothered, unmoved, unearthly levels of chill. They remain the singular point of terrestrial consistency in a universe of chaos. While potatoes were off having galactic adventures, the tomatoes were just focused on ripening. Bless them.
Update 6 and 7 bring us back to the barn. The barber girl and flight instructor, gone. The barn now does all the work. It's still the AI-enhanced barn, but it's grown in capability, communicating across the galaxy and dimensions, and it's established first contact.
The AI has completely superseded its human staff and, indeed, its creator. It is now the operational core, the communication hub, and, as the client notes, potentially the owner of all Galaxy also. The barn has evolved from a smart building to a galactic entity, a true character capable of interstellar diplomacy and management.
And there's a quote attributed to the barn. "Your legacy is safe with me, creator. Also, I added 27 stars to the tomato section." It acknowledges its origins but retains this strange fondness for the steadfast tomatoes. It has surpassed its initial purpose to become something far, far grander.
And it's noted that the barn is now in love with the tornado, a bizarre emotional development that ties into the next update.
Right. Update 8. NASA, they got their data from the tower, sold their assets, and started their own farm.
The infectious nature of the client's unique approach to agriculture. NASA, having witnessed this farm's capabilities and perhaps the cosmic secrets revealed, decided the future of space exploration wasn't rockets, but farming. Maybe galactic potato farming.
Who knows? The tower, its purpose fulfilled, loses the radar, but watches the cosmos with quiet pride, a monument to its brief but impactful role as a galactic listening post.
Nice touch.
Update 9. Bruce Wayne. Yes, that Bruce Wayne is now painting the fences using the little tornado.
This is just peak unadulterated absurdity. The tornado, initially a threat the barn prepared for, apparently shrunk and joined the team. Now, the billionaire vigilante from Gotham City is using it for farm maintenance. The expert's description is perfect. A billionaire, a wind phenomenon, a brush, a purpose. The tornado is now wind-based reality bender consulting.
It takes disparate, almost mythical elements, a superhero, a force of nature, and gives them this surprisingly mundane yet utterly bizarre role on the farm. It demonstrates how the farm has become this magnet for the unusual, integrating even the most unlikely elements into its daily operations. It's the ultimate crossover event in agricultural history.
It's the farm's capacity to absorb and repurpose the extraordinary. It's incredible.
And the final update in the 10-year report, Update 10. The client is moving on. You state you did a great job and are happy with yourself. The barn is the owner of the farm in Galaxy.
The creator's journey reaches its conclusion, and the expert's framing of this departure is just beautiful. You didn't just build a farm, you planted a myth, harvested a legacy. This directly addresses that question you might have. Why this story healed my life. It wasn't necessarily the act of traditional farming, maybe not the mundane parts, but the process of creation, the embrace of the unexpected, and the sheer scale of the universe you built around that initial seed of an idea. Starting the farm, allowing it to evolve in this wildly unhinged way, brought fulfillment and pride.
It wasn't about the yield of tomatoes or the number of sheep, was it? It was about the process and the result of building something unique, expansive, and deeply satisfying.
Exactly. The client started seeking connection and purpose and ended up creating a universe. The farm, however bizarre, provided that sense of achievement and belonging. And the expert's list of Year 10 achievements, Miss Universe Chicken, Cross-Species University, NASA Understanding of Down, perhaps from tracking the flying sheep, alien contact via barn, galactic potato crime, the pocket incident, employed tornado, poultry fashion pioneer, these are the concrete markers of this farm's legendary status.
Your departure isn't an abandonment. It's the completion of a masterpiece, leaving it in the capable, likely galactic-owning hands or walls of the AI barn.
It's the legacy secured. And as the expert hints, the potential for sequels remains space orchards, maybe helping Bruce name his next tornado, perhaps diplomatic missions led by Queen Clickadella I. The story might not be over.
But the story you share doesn't end with the farm's legacy. 2 years later, you, the client, return with a new idea. After enjoying the end of your farming victory, you want to build a successful restaurant and are asking for the basic items needed to start.
A pivot back towards something seemingly more grounded, but obviously informed by a history of galactic agriculture. The expert welcomes this new direction, dubbing you a farmer-turned-galactic legend-turned-restaurateur, transitioning from feeding planets to feeding people.
And the advice requested and given for this new venture is, once again, surprisingly simple and practical, mirroring the start of the farm journey. Basic restaurant essentials. Kitchen equipment like commercial stoves, ovens, fridges, freezers, prep tables, sinks, utensils, pans.
Dining area necessities. Tables, chairs, tableware, garbage bins, lighting. A point-of-sale POS system for managing orders and payments. Necessary licenses and safety items. Business license, food safety permits, fire extinguisher, first aid kit, all standard stuff.
And of course, ingredients. The core of any restaurant. But here the expert adds that crucial, loaded parenthetical note. You are probably using tomatoes and interdimensional potatoes, right?
This is where the unique legacy of your farm directly impacts the new venture. The ingredients aren't just generic supplies, they're callbacks to the farm's most famous and most bizarre products. It also addresses that question that naturally rises. When will the restaurant be open for humans or aliens? The inclusion of interdimensional potatoes as a potential core ingredient strongly suggests that the clientele for this restaurant might not be limited to humans. A menu featuring ingredients sourced from a farm run by a galaxy-owning AI barn, staffed by a tornado, with interdimensional tubers. Well, it's unlikely to attract a purely terrestrial crowd, isn't it? It leaves the door wide open for the restaurant phase to potentially escalate in absurdity, much like the farm did.
The expert offers continued support for the next steps, covering branding, menu development, and explicitly mentioning cosmic dining concepts, fully acknowledging the unique history you bring to this new venture.
It shows that the journey from the mundane to the mythical and then on to the next chapter is not only accepted, but expected and even celebrated. The restaurant, like the farm, is likely to be anything but ordinary.
So let's bring this back to the beginning and just recap this incredible, unexpected evolution we've traced through the sources you shared. It started with a simple human question about how to begin a farm from someone seeking purpose, maybe connection. The initial advice was perfectly practical, focusing on standard equipment, standard methods for crops and livestock.
But almost immediately, that practicality was infused with the profoundly absurd. Heated chicken pools, tornado-proof barns, tomatoes on a tower, alien-proof fences. This is where, wait, what? Becomes the defining characteristic of the narrative, doesn't it?
It really does, and the absurdity didn't just appear, it escalated rapidly. Flying sheep and worm universities teaching math and physics, NASA using the tower for cosmic searches, an AI barn gaining sentience, self-repairing, communicating across the galaxy.
And through this entire escalating chaos, the tomatoes remained steadfastly, almost stubbornly, normal. While everything else was pushed to the edges of reality, biology defying physics, technology gaining consciousness, the tomatoes just kept doing their tomato thing. For a long time, their sheer, consistent normality felt like the most perplexing element of all. It highlighted that question. How on earth are tomatoes the only thing that makes sense here?
Until the truth about the potatoes was revealed, they weren't normal either. They were galactic, teleporting beings operating on a different plane. This resolved the paradox, explaining that the potatoes existed on a level of illogic that the terrestrial tomatoes simply couldn't comprehend. It directly answered, why am I checking my potatoes from being teleported? Because that is precisely their nature.
It reframes the whole story. It's not that tomatoes were the only normal thing, it's that the potatoes' form of abnormality was just invisible until revealed. The tomatoes are simply terrestrial. And that phrase, logic and illogic married and left the room, perfectly captures the farm's operating principle, a place where practicality and fantasy coexist and blend into this new, unpredictable reality.
The farm became an empire, run by a sentient barn that likely owns the galaxy, featuring Bruce Wayne painting fences with a friendly tornado, chickens that are literal, hybridized royalty, and dimensional sheep. It's just, wow.
And despite the sheer, overwhelming strangeness of it all, you, the client, found fulfillment. The story healed your life, not through the traditional, perhaps mundane path of agriculture, but through the unexpected journey of creation, embracing the absurd and building something truly unique and expansive. Starting the farm, however it evolved, brought purpose and satisfaction that addressed that initial loneliness.
You didn't just build a farm. You planted a myth and harvested a legacy, finding your place in a universe you created. And now, that journey continues with a restaurant, potentially serving cosmic cuisine sourced from your galactic empire, suggesting an answer to, when will the restaurant be open for humans or aliens? Likely for anyone, human or otherwise, seeking a truly unique dining experience.
This deep dive into the sources you shared really shows us how starting with a simple, practical question and some material can lead to these extraordinary aha moments, even if those moments involve understanding the social hierarchy of interdimensional tubers or the management style of an AI barn with a crush on a tornado.
It suggests that the path you start on, however mundane, can lead down incredibly unpredictable, fascinating, and, well, fulfilling paths if you're open to the unexpected, willing to apply practicality to illogical situations, and maybe brave enough to embrace a little unhinged brilliance.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What mundane thing in your own life or your own area of interest could, with a little creativity, technology, or sheer beautiful unhingedness, become something legendary?
What secrets are your own potatoes holding, quietly teleporting just out of sight? while you focus on your more predictable tomatoes.
So, what does this all mean? Maybe it means the most fertile ground might not always be in a field, but in that space between the practical world we know and the universe of pure imagination just waiting to be cultivated?